We started with this pretty simple purpose. We're just trying to be good humans and help others look good and feel good. And we thought to deliver on that with the best possible t-shirt in the world, one that people absolutely love wearing every day. It fits them really great, it feels really great, and it's offered at a price point that they feel is fair and reasonable. And the product market fit, to your very point, was just out of this world. And what's interesting, you mentioned a lot of people researching us. The typical person who researches always looks for some sort of like an X factor, right? Like, what is that? How is that possible? And the funny thing is that there isn't one, right? There is no celebrity backing this brand. There is no VC funding to burn. There is no magical product innovation that hasn't been done before. We went into a commodity space, making it better, serving our customers better, and we're able to really exceed kind of like everybody's expectations, right? So if you think about what we have done in a nutshell is stayed very purpose-oriented and very consumer-centric and thought about how can we scale that as quickly as possible across markets, channels, and products. So on markets, we believe that the problem we solved is not the US problem. So we figured, why don't we offer ourselves elsewhere? And we're available in 190 markets worldwide. On channels, we moved from basically being a Shopify website and saying, well, where else do people shop, right? Maybe they shop on social shops, so let's be there. And maybe they shop on marketplaces, so let's launch Amazon. Or maybe they want brick and mortar because they got to feel it. So we set up our own 8 stores and are talking to different wholesale partners. And on products, we said, like, look, if we help guys with their t-shirt to look good and feel good, like, what else can we do, right? What other categories? So we dropped the tees. We used to be True Classic Tees and became True Classic and launched a bunch of other categories that we believe we can do a great job at. So jeans, activewear, jackets, underwear, you name it, we do it or are about to do it. And we're also thinking about other categories for guys outside of apparel as well as for females, which is on the roadmap. If you think about the brand, you mentioned kind of like what are we trying to do next, is really stick on that course, but there's so much more to do because we're talking about like trillions of dollars in addressable market worldwide. We just are scratching the surface when it comes to our international expansion. We're just scratching the surface when it comes to our distribution expansion, right? We're still very much 99+% of our sales are coming online, yet 65+% of people shop for clothing offline, right? How can we bridge that gap? So there's just so much more for us to do with what we are already doing. And it's just a matter of continuously executing in that super well, staying true to who we are, serving those customers, making people look good and feel good, and moving as quickly as we possibly can while trying to, maximize that profitable growth.
And I think that's interesting that you say when people are looking for your growth hacks or whatever it may be, they are looking for some sort of X factor, but you say there's not one. When we first met at that after party after the D2C conference, I asked you that very question of like, what would you attribute your growth to? And the answer you gave me was that you have continued to move and execute at a very high rate. And that is what really drives the growth for you all.
It's true. My mantra is that we have to be better tomorrow than we are today. As simple as that. If you wake up every single morning and take a hard look, objective look at what you're doing, what you're good at, what can you get better, and focus on that, you are going to turn around better results. And that's how we live here. And we think through, a few managerial dimensions: quality, cost, speed, dependability, flexibility, diversification. And we just take a look and we say like, well, how are we doing right now in a given area? It can be shipping, it can be creative, it can be product development, it can be supply chain, you name it. We take a hard look and we say, okay, so what should we execute on today? And what about this week? And what about this month? And we don't even think too far in the future. The biggest we plan really is kind of like on a quarterly basis, but we're very much living here day to day, week to week, and are relentless about being better tomorrow than we are today. I would tell you that creative is one of the things that I feel like we're doing a better job at than most. So I would say it's probably one of our strengths. And it's a huge actual driver to why the company was successful, but it's one of the pieces. It's not that if you were to take the True Classic creative and call it something else, you'll have a True Classic. It's actually the combination of quite a few things that brings you to that level of scale. And it always goes back to execution, which is what I stress to everybody at all times. Everybody goes for, when I talk to like aspiring entrepreneurs, they just obsess so much over the idea, and is that idea good enough? And what about that idea? And here's an even better idea. And I don't say ideas don't matter. Ideas are the seed for success, and I'm all for thinking big and improving ideas. But what you really need to focus on is, can you execute this idea better than anybody else? And that's where the magic happens, right? It doesn't take, like, you can go and create a new clothing company tomorrow. It's going to be about your execution, not about pretty much anything else. So that's, I guess, like, to give you a little bit more color. Speed to us matters a lot. We believe that done is better than perfect. And we are incredibly biased towards action.
And I know speed of execution, action is so important. One thing that you definitely need to have with that as well is the right people or the right partners or the right tools. What's the current headcount of True Classic internal team members?
We're just under 60.
What's your philosophy, or what is your kind of checklist when it comes to hiring or deciding that it's time to hire for a new role?
I'm so glad you asked for that, because frankly and transparently, I find that to be probably the hardest part in business is people.
Staff. Yeah.
Staffing, and staffing correctly, right? It's not just having people or hiring, it's having the right people in the right seats. Easily said, very hard to execute. And things change too, right? You might have hired someone who was great for your journey from 0 to 10 million. And now that you're trying to go from 10 to 100, you need someone else. And from 100 to 2 is another person. And so things evolve so rapidly, especially in a startup environment. And the business needs always change. So the first thing I would say is, like, are we really crisp on what are the business needs? Can we articulate that really well? Once we have a business need, we need to figure out how can we meet that business need. A lot of people start with hiring. I go, hiring is last on the list. The first on the list is technology. Is there AI? Is there a SaaS? Is there some other tool or way to meet the business need effectively, automatically, simply, without ever needing to hire a person? If that's not available, I think outsource. Is there an agency? Is there a partner? Is there a consultant? Is there an offshore resource that can do that and can do that really well? And when the answer is no, I go back to the hiring. And I'm thinking, what are the specific areas of responsibility for that person that we are hiring? And then I'm thinking, who is going to do a really good job for that particular role? I think about hiring in two main themes, which is around intelligence and around grit. Intelligence is easy, relatively easy to identify, and I'm not confusing that or conflating that with experience. Just raw intelligence. Are you a solid, have solid business acumen? Can you analyze something and come to the right conclusion, right? Grit, which is the harder of the two, is so important in a startup environment, and I don't believe you can teach that. I think you're born with it, or from a very early age, for some sort of life circumstances, you developed it. I cannot teach someone how to be motivated. I cannot teach someone how to have a fire in them burning every day to make something bigger. That's innate. And those are kind of like the two main characteristics. And when it comes to like the company, the vision is to say, look, we need leaders in particular areas. We don't need a million leaders, but we need leaders for every big area of responsibility, right? Maybe it's customer support leader, or logistics leader, or supply chain, or paid media, right? Those to me need to be in-house, because no matter what changes in the ecosystem, you need that person to take that and be the leader. And we want to empower those individuals to be the CEO of their own divisions or functions. But then everything beyond that, it's a combination of like a lot of agencies, a lot of external partners, a lot of tech and SaaS. We work with over 100 different partners, and some individuals too that help. But I would say that is the layer probably that's most important for like, who do you have in those very specific seats? And then everything else be fluid. And again, even with partnerships, one partner might be really good to get you to where you got, and you might need another to move to the next stage because things evolve.
Yeah, we have a phrase, delete, audit, automate, delegate. I got that from a consultant, Mike Kazoil, that we've worked with. Focus on, do we need this? Is it providing value? If not, we can delete it. Can we automate it? If we can't, then delegate it. It's interesting to hear from the brand owner perspective, looking for agency or external resource before bringing in-house. I have a kind of a theory on why that is, but could you just kind of elaborate on that a little bit of why you would want an external partner before bringing somebody in-house?
I would say that like I mentioned to you speed, right? And I'll give you like a specific example. Let's just say we're trying to build a true classic together and we're trying to go to 9 figures in no time. And if I were to try to do everything in-house, and I just take it to the max, right? I would want to hire people that can create fabrics and can cut and saw and can fulfill the orders and can answer any particular email from a customer, and you name it, right? You would quickly say like that alone, just to staff everything, build all the internal expertise, would take us a really, really long time. And likely we won't be doing it particularly well, not as well as someone who made a whole business out of that particular part of the value chain. So some people feel comfortable outsourcing certain parts, like manufacturing, right? Most brands won't even bother. 3PL to do logistics, right? Well, why wouldn't you do that? I mean, do you want to manage your own warehouse and deal with all the headache? It just feels like the juice is not worth the squeeze. If you start thinking really critically about what is it that you have in-house versus out, kind of like outsourced, you would start realizing that the brand is not particularly strong at many different things, and in many cases, you might find a partner that's really, really solid in solving a very particular area. And if you really think about it, all goes back to execution. Who do you want to execute on everything that you're doing, right? You want the absolute best of the best in any particular seat, doing the best work in that particular area. So, I also think you want diversity of talent, right? And if you're trying to keep a really lean OpEx model, like how many people are you going to be able to hire practically? The other piece I would say that goes for agency with us is we build really solid partnerships. We build the True Classic on the back of a lot of really great partnerships. It's harder to make a partnership with an employee, but it's easier to make it with another business. And the idea is, hey, business partner, help us grow, and we will help you grow. You make True Classic better, we're going to help you with your business, and you'll have testimonials, case studies, and great things coming from us. And it creates for those like mutually beneficial partnerships where you basically have more leverage with the external parties than you would necessarily with quote unquote an employee. Also, employees change, people, come and go. They want to do what they want to do. Sometimes it's in line with what the business wants, sometimes it doesn't. So it really depends, but it's more about like not only employees or only external. It's asking yourself again, how can you best solve for the business need? Is that a hire? Is that technology? Is that a partner? And I have found that like in many cases, if we're able to solve with tech or external parties, we're better off than trying to build the competency in-house.
Yeah, and obviously I'm a little biased in this conversation, but can definitely see what you're saying. That onboarding time with a new team member versus a new agency can often be shaved down when you go with an external partner. One question I have that I would love to know your perspective on, and this is something I've seen clients worry about. This is something I've seen happen in clients' businesses, especially as they grow to, businesses 200, 300, 400 headcount, silos or departmentalization with teams or with data or with strategies or whatever it may be. How do you feel about that? And like, how do you go about handling building out teams?
Yeah, we have a very collaborative group over here. Everybody is like working very well, I would say, cross-functionally. We, on the one hand, have a set of tools that helps us with the day-to-day work. So that can be Slack for communication and a lot of channels that create visibility. That can be Asana for project management. And then we have practices to really help us clarify. We mentioned kind of like the areas of responsibility. What needs to be discussed with whom, right? So one model we use is the RACI model. Who's responsible, who's accountable, who needs to be consulted, who needs to be informed. as you hit different bumps in the road, and you do, especially for us moving very fast, you debrief and you say like, hey, I didn't realize we launched X, Y, and Z channel and we haven't had a chance to, let's just say, review it for accounting purposes, or we haven't had a chance to review the customer support use cases. You just add that back to the SOP and say like, okay, next time when we launch a channel, X, Y, and Z person needs to be involved at that stage of the process. And you just continuously kind of like evolve from that. What I have found is that it's never perfect, but there's two sides to this problem. One, where things are being in silo, where you're like, hey, you needed that person's input into X, Y, and Z, and you didn't, and that's one type of challenge. But the other is too many cooks in every kitchen, a lot of distraction, a lot of noise, and really preventing people from being able to do focused work and making a big impact. And seeing both sides of the problems, I think the latter is a much more severe one, especially in our current day and age. I'm less concerned with the silo, unless, again, there's something existential that you're like, if that person is not involved, things fall apart. I'm more concerned with the constant distraction that everybody is dealing with on a day-to-day basis, when 100 different things come your way and you're completely overwhelmed and you forget for a second, like, what do you need to do every single day? What are your focus points, or how are you going to make a big impact? So it's an agile model, I would say, and we are not perfect at this, but that's my kind of like perspective on that.
No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And I know hiring's an opportunity. One thing you said you look at as well as tech. And for the sake of clickbait, or just for listeners and the algorithms, I got to mention AI at least once. I personally have a lot of high intent for it. I know in our previous conversation, that's one thing that we talked about. For the most part of it actually was AI. I listened to a few podcast interviews with Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI. His vision for the next 5 to 10 years is just astronomical, outside of the $7 billion that they're trying to raise in seed funding.
Wasn't that trillion?
Was it trillion? Okay, then I
I
underestimated.
think it was like literally as astronomical as $7 trillion, which is like some ridiculous percent of global GDP. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, so they have big plans, lots going on there. But what use cases or what focuses do you have for AI right now? Like, are you bullish on it? Do you feel like it's something that's worth incorporating into D2C or just within your business model?
I couldn't be more bullish, is how I would put it. But I can tell you that we're doing a great job at AI, just to set the record straight. I would like call it like a wannabe AI kind of like person. I see the vision, I see the potential. I think we're yet to even understand where this is going, because it's moving so fast and it's so unprecedented, and it's kind of hard to wrap your head around all the possibilities and the use cases. And there are certain tools that are more advanced than others. There are certain things where, you see people just like shutting it down because it's like it didn't come perfect the first time around, but they don't really kind of like work with it or really understand it. So I would say that for any CEO or operator at this stage, you have to obsess over AI, and you have to really understand how AI works. Everybody used the term, but really understand just the basic mechanics, right? Of like, what does it mean to have a large language model, or what does it mean to train the model? How can you get better output from it, or what are the potential use cases for your brand? And it will quickly push you in different things that you start realizing, like, where is value going to be created, right? So once you start to understand that, you start realizing, well, look, I really have to have access to clean data sets, because that's a huge area of value. If you really strip out all the execution parts we talked about, because eventually AIs and robots and whatever are going to do a better job than we all can, what are you left with, right? So you go back to like data. You go back to like maybe set of processes, right? You have a few things that are really meaningfully, materially, whatever, yours, proprietary, your kind of like value as a brand. And you need to really obsess out how to kind of like extract information out of it, right? So I'll give you a specific example. I'm a marketer guy, but let's just use something else. Let's just talk about customer service. And You over time are in the business of making customers happy, right? For us, a healthy customer is one that recommends us, right? High NPS score, or someone who's satisfied with the brand, right? A high customer satisfaction score. You have all sorts of engagements with those customers, right? So one thing will be just to throw an AI chatbot. Another would be to say, let's look at our most successful customer interactions and subset them out. The ones that ended up in a high NPS, high CSAT, whatever the KPI might be. And let's train AI based on our best agents, best interactions, best results. You're going to get a chatbot that eventually will outperform any human agent once it sees enough of those interactions and will have the right answer or will have the right recommendation. And when that gets better, then obviously you become more efficient and you can hit all the KPIs, right? You can lower the response time because AI is there. It doesn't need to sleep. It doesn't need to eat. You're going to get better outcomes because the content of the conversation is going to be better, and so on. So like that's an easy one to think about. If you think about paid media or growth, I know there's lots of marketers listening to this podcast. Like, why are we managing budgets the way we do? Why can't we tell AI what's the KPI we're trying to drive and let it figure out what to push, when to push, how to push, right? We can't believe that we can arbitrarily make those decisions better in our working hours, right? Versus like letting it ride over on top of everything, right? So I think what you're going to find is like, if you think about media buying, I think it's a matter of few years max, but like it just, some of those roles will completely change in nature because there's not going to be value created by someone manually pushing, pulling budgets or certain settings, right? AI will do a better job there. So you have to evolve and maybe spend more time really understanding how to move the needle for those brands. So maybe you do obsess more over creative and understanding consumer psychology and coming up with fresh ideas on how to market better to those customers, right? So there's probably applications for everything we do in D2C to a different extreme, but I would just encourage anybody who has not really gotten into it to first prioritize that, maybe challenge yourself to do 1 hour of AI reading a week or something. And then just start with ChatGPT. There's so much going on there. Every time I open it up, there's new stuff, new GPT models. You can have it be your best analyst. You can do lots of different things just there. So don't even go too far. Just go to ChatGPT and play around with it, and magic comes on the other side.
Yeah, and to kind of focus on what you're saying about the media buying piece, I know I was seeing from Meta reps for like an enterprise client that we have that certain accounts were given the opportunity to get credit or like a partnership with a Facebook approved creative agency to make creative for their account. And from my perception, what Facebook was doing was building out case studies on how creative improvements could create account lift. And I feel like that kind of coincides with the movement they're making towards, Advantage Plus and things like that to take away focus from media buying. They'll handle it. You focus on the creative. You focus on the actual messaging of your product. I have to pick your brain on one thing. Where do you stand with brand marketing? What does brand marketing mean to you in the grand scheme of things?
I love that. So first of all, I don't love the notion in the industry that you are either doing brand or DR, and it's kind of like, well, if it's direct response, it's not a brand, and if it's brand, it's not direct response. I think at the end of the day, those are all arbitrary definitions by marketers and like what it is that you're doing. So you have to go back. I'm trying to always think like first principles, right? So what does that mean? What does creating a brand even mean, right? What does marketing even mean? Why does advertising work? Why do we do all of that? And at the end of the day, it's like you're creating this like perception or set of expectations for the consumer, right? So when they hear True Classic, what do they expect from us, right? And when they hear Apple, you might expect innovation and flawless computation. When you hear Nike, maybe you expect like just do it, confidence boost, and like athletic power. So whatever it is, right? So what is it about True Classic? So what I would say for us, it's about the fit, right? We really obsessed over creating clothing that really fit you super well. It's about the comfort, right? When people put it on, they constantly are amazed by how soft the fabric is and how comfortable it is to wear our clothing in their day-to-day, right? If you put our jeans on, it's super stretchy and breathable and just it feels like you're wearing joggers. So there are certain things like that you start teaching the consumer, when you get a piece from True Classic, you can count on the fit, you can count on the comfort, you can count on the price being fair and affordable compared to what you would pay for like these premium quality basics, right? So then I'm thinking, okay, so what is branding for True Classic? Branding is really ensuring that we're reaching those people out there and training them and explaining to them what is it that they can expect from us at the end of the day. And you can do that without necessarily doing the splashiest brand activations, right? It doesn't mean that you have to throw a bunch of high production value visuals in Times Square and now you're building brand. That can very much happen on social. That can happen on YouTube. That can happen on TV. That can happen everywhere you're doing it. And to me, the direct response component is to keep the lights on, right? You can build a brand while still driving sales. And if you're a bootstrap brand, which I think more and more brands inevitably would be because VC funding is kind of tough, and I don't know if it's coming back and to what extent, but I think the model makes more sense in tech companies where, you need an initial investment and eventually you can monetize later on. When you're building a brand, like direct to consumer brand, like you need to make ends meet kind of quickly. And so you have to find the right balance. And so to me, we are always about performant branding, if that makes sense. It's not to say that we're not branding while we're doing DR. It's to say that we're trying to think about that lasting impression on the person on the other side. If I were to pull you out after seeing our advertisement, how did I make you feel? What do you remember about True Classic, right? And what would you do about it, right? And it's like those to me are kind of like the elements that are really important at the end of the day. And what you find is that, a lot of the ads that resonate with people, that people recall, are like our funny ads. And it's really interesting, right, as a DR advertiser, because on the one hand, we spend a lot of money on, let's just say, UGCs. I don't think I've ever seen a single customer to this date recalling, oh, I remember that UGC ad that you guys ran with that person wearing like, it just doesn't do that trick, right? Maybe that got them to make the last click and convert. But what was the actual lasting impression? It wasn't a UGC, I can guarantee that. It very much is those other more thoughtful, funnier ads. Why? Because I provoked emotion and I found really silly ways to talk about what it is that we're doing. And that sticks with people. And that's what you're trying to do when you're building a brand. And so it's a combination of things. But that's kind of like in a nutshell how I'm thinking about it.
Well, that makes perfect sense. And, leading up to this interview, I put out some tweets, we call them since it's X now, but put out some posts on Twitter asking people if they had any questions for you as you were coming on board. Someone that I referenced earlier, Mike Kazoil, operations consultant, sent in a question. Based on your experience with True Classic, what have been some of the most effective strategies for maximizing your profit margins, and where do you see potential for further improvements down the road?
Love it. So I look at the P&L line by line pretty much every day, and I just prioritize by impact, right? So first and foremost, most important to me are all the variable costs. So for e-com, starting with, and people don't even think about it this way, but with discounts, because it's a cost before you start hitting net revenue, payment processing fees, fulfillment, pick and pack, shipping, product COGS, right? And I go kind of like line by line, and I'm trying to think about where can we make an impact. So initially there was room everywhere because we never really optimized that, right? So on payment processing fees, we went back and forth, and we left Shopify Pay and we went to like Braintree with PayPal, and then we went back, and now we're back with Shopify Pay until we got to a place where we felt like we optimized the processing fees as best as we possibly could, and we moved past it. On shipping, right? Optimizing your carriers, optimizing the logic, placing different distribution centers to get closer to that customer so you can ship it cheaper and better and faster. So important, still ongoing, huge line on the P&L if you think operationally. And you can't obsess over that enough, because this work has continuously kind of like more room for improvement. But we've made some major unlocks around that, and we're continuously trying to optimize our operations. I think shipping in particular is a huge line item that people need to obsess over. And the two metrics there is like, what's the average cost to ship the package and what is the average transit time, in my opinion. I mentioned two discounts. We used to offer discounts as a percent off, and it just shaves it from the top. And one thing that was kind of innovative was we talked to these guys at Fandu, and they were like talking about this cashback idea, which was kind of interesting. So we tested that, and that turned out to be a huge profit maker. And it basically, instead of offering a percent off, we offer people cash back, and then when they're redeeming it, they can either take it as cash back and get the money, or they can get store credit for True Classic and even get kind of like a boost on that. So a lot of people choose the store credit, which brings them back, right? So you're like really driving the P&L there. Product COGS, you have to negotiate and renegotiate and reshop your vendors. It's a never-ending process. There's probably always someone out there is going to maybe be able to produce better products faster, cheaper. So optimizing on that, you can't obsess over that enough. And then those are, to me, the main levers for COGS before you get to gross profit. Then you have to obsess over media, huge line item for any direct-to-consumer, right? So you mentioned, like, what am I getting for what I'm paying? Like, you can't obsess over that enough, right? Which gets it to contribution profit. But we use a lot of different tools. We use a post-purchase survey. We use MTA with Triple. We use incrementality studies and lift studies, and we tried MMM, went on and off. But we look at so many different ways to cut and slice that one fat line item, because the efficiency you can drive out of your media can make or break your company. And we mentioned creative, which is a huge part of it. And then last but not least is OpEx. And we're very lean on OpEx, which gives us more room to be kind of like more scalable, right? And you can also get more operating leverage if you're able to drive more revenue, right? Or contribution profit, I would say, from kind of like how much your OpEx is at. But again, like every dollar of this company, the mindset is like it has to either directly generate revenue or very clearly support revenue generation. There's no other dollars being spent. And if we're not clear on one of the two, that falls in your bucket of delete or cancel, right? So having those periodic OpEx reviews and thinking very critically on how well does that money kind of like serve the company needs is another critical piece. And again, going back to this daily mindset of like, how can I make tomorrow's P&L look better than today's? What sticks out? How are the trends going, right? So no magical bullets, but just constant optimization and prioritize from the biggest line items to the smallest ones.
Keeping it top of mind always, definitely important. Well, I know we're coming towards the top of our recording time slot here, so I want to round off to the final three questions I normally ask people. For the first one, if you had to summarize everything that we've discussed today into a marketing mindset, what mindset should marketers or business owners have?
Be relentless about being better tomorrow than you are today. That's the mindset. It's constantly changing. It's constantly evolving. Be in a mindset of learn it all versus know it all. And to me, that that's the growth mindset. That's what it is.
Our main core value at BrighterClick is education first, so I can relate to that 100%. Always looking for learning opportunities from every conversation, from every campaign, everything that happens. For anyone listening who is at the stage of figuring out what they'd like to do in the marketing industry, what marketing role or roles do you think will have the highest demand opportunity in the next 3 to 5 years?
I would say that there is basically the two types of basically acquisition or paid media, and then there's going to be retention or owned media, which I feel like people conflate the two. I think those are the two most important kind of like legs that actually the third, I'll give you four. I'll give you paid media, owned media, creative, and analytics. Okay, so hear me out. Analytics is the strategy, right? The analytical people need to tell you where to go. They need to tell you what's working, how well it's working, what's not working, and they direct the team. The creative team is the execution, right? They make magic happen. They take an insight and create an asset or create a piece of content that really is likely to perform. And then the types of media owners, and again, paid versus owned will be email, SMS, whatnot, are two angles of how to take the insights from the analytics people and take the creative, literally assets, and essentially go to war, right? Okay, let's go and maximize the value we can out of any given channel with the knowledge we have and with the assets we have. I don't think if you're leading any of those four core pillars, I don't know if you will ever run out of like opportunities, because, and I would pick one you feel passionate and feel really strong about, and then lean really in. If you're the paid media director, you need to know any paid media channel out there like the back of your hand. What's trending now? What's working now? What are the latest, greatest? Be detail oriented. The devil is in the detail, right? Be really in the know. Be the master of your own craft. Same goes to like the own channels, right? So those are probably the four buckets I would bet on.
Yeah, I think that's good. And just kind of elaborating on owning your channel or knowing all the channels if you're a paid media, I think that same thing applies to designers as well. Designers can be very good at logo design or pamphlet design or website design or whatever it may be. But as they start doing paid ads on TikTok or Facebook or whatever it may be, learning the best practices, learning what works, what doesn't, can be a huge game changer there as well. And last question for you, Ben, where can listeners connect with you or just learn more about you and your business?
LinkedIn, probably the best one. Just hit me up on LinkedIn. Happy to chat.
Cool. Ben, well, I appreciate you coming on today. Great conversation.
Likewise. Thank you, buddy.